We are not out of the woods just yet globally when it comes to the novel coronavirus. A new report says worldwide deaths have now topped 600,000. To talk more about it is our foreign affairs expert, Lisa Daftari, joining me once again via Skype from Los Angeles. Lisa, why don't we begin in your own country where cases have exploded in some areas of California and Florida? Florida is reporting more than 10,000 cases 5 days in a row.
Yeah, Florida is the mysterious case, I should say, because it was the place that was not affected. It was a place where people would cite that people are outside, they're at the beach, they're at the restaurants, but they are social distancing, they're staying outside, they're wearing their masks, they're behaving to a certain extent. But because the weather permits for it, from March, they had been in a better situation, rather, if you want to compare it to New York City, for example, to stay, socially distant from one another and to stay outdoors and quarantine to the best of their ability. And many people from the New York, Connecticut, New Jersey area, which was highly affected here in the United States, flocked to Florida in order to, have some semblance of normalcy for the few months that we were under quarantine. But now it has caught up with them. While we are experiencing a second surge in Los Angeles, for example, Florida is experiencing its first and horrific numbers daily, growing by about 10,000 or more, exponentially growing. And, they just weren't prepared for this to hit in the peak of summertime the way that it has.
Now, our country still has its border closed to your country via ground travel for non-essential travel. Canadian officials say 10,000 Americans were recently turned away at the border, Lisa. And for just over 2 months, Prince Edward Island, beautiful little island province here in Canada, went without a single case of COVID-19. But that all changed thanks to a foreign student infected with the virus who entered Canada from the United States.
Yeah, all it takes is that one person, and then it exponentially grows into bigger numbers. And let me be the one to apologize on behalf of the United States to Canada, to all of your viewers, to say we tried to close down the borders, but there are people getting through, whether they are, little tourism here and there leaking into Canada, whether it is the truck drivers who are getting through on the excuse of going cross-border, and of course this student and others who are traveling either overseas or into the United States from Canada and returning home, bringing COVID with them. Look, it's very, very difficult to stop border-to-border transfer, and in this case we have so much back and forth between the two countries that it was almost inevitable. So here we have the numbers in Canada going up. Because of the numbers in the United States going up, it's a domino effect. And unfortunately, the numbers in Canada going up because we're seeing such a surge here in the United States again, especially on the borders. You also have people driving to Alaska and getting through that way. So there are definitely, the numbers are going up.
You and I have talked before about some of the other countries badly infected with the novel coronavirus, including Brazil, and there was Iran at one point in time. Now, when it comes to COVID-19, Hong Kong is reporting its highest one-day rise in cases. That poor city. I mean, health officials there say they want to do 10,000 tests per day in a city of 7.5 million.
Yeah, Hong Kong is going through a lot, and it is no surprise that their numbers are going up. It's similar to what we saw here, similar yet different, I should say, in terms of protesters on the streets in Hong Kong. You had people going out to either, do some political activism. You had people going out and returning to school and work and going about their daily lives. In Hong Kong, there's a twofold fear right now. First being coronavirus, but second, there's a political fear going on that their lives will be taken over by the Chinese government that is overstepping their bounds politically in order to control Hong Kong to the best of its ability. So individuals in Hong Kong, whether they are young or old or working or in school, are attempting to live life with as much normalcy as possible, and others are trying to escape. They're trying to get out of Hong Kong. They're trying to find haven in other places where they can continue to live with freedom, to study, to work, to live without the tyranny of the Chinese empire over them.
The president of El Salvador recently said that he would postpone the second phase of the country's economic reopening. The Central American country has registered a total of 11,846 coronavirus cases, but fortunately only 335 deaths.
Yeah, their numbers aren't too bad, but a lot of countries, just like El Salvador, are doing this recalculation of the openings. If they have any reason to believe that they shouldn't reopen, if the numbers don't look right, then they won't reopen. Many places, this doesn't really have to do with the number of deaths or the percentage of the population being infected, but it has to do more with, and I'm sorry to say, but the political environment. You are basically making a decision of life or death, and both decisions are difficult. Whether you shut down and create economic death, and I mean that. I mean, there's many families affected all around the world. I know here in the United States, you have families are devastated by this coronavirus, whether it's from the death of someone who got the virus, or if it's the death of a family business, or somebody who lost a job, or somebody who can't go on and provide for their families. So we're seeing both sides of this, and to make that decision is extremely difficult. To look at the numbers and say, well, only had X amount of deaths. Well, that's X amount too many, but at the same time, how many people will be affected by the other types of deaths that we talk about, whether it's suicide or economic hardship, etc.
There's been a surge of COVID-19 cases in Australia's second biggest city that could take weeks to subside despite a lockdown and orders to wear masks. Lisa, health officials say it could take weeks to slow the outbreak when Victoria and the rest of Australia reported single or double-digit daily infections.
Yeah, that's another place where they were handling or tackling the virus extremely well. They were able to keep their numbers down, but again, the second wave has hit them differently. Look, in a lot of places, they were able to handle it well in the first round, but now we're talking about herd immunity, perhaps because not so many people were infected the first time around. It's affecting more people the second time around. In other places, it's because of tourism. It's because people returned home after being abroad or having vacations. Right now, we're having summer holiday. A lot of people are going abroad or traveling, taking advantage of very cheap airline tickets. All sorts of things. Where you calculate all this together, you're seeing a lot more of a surge in places where we didn't see it before. It's difficult to really gauge where this is happening, how this is happening, and when there will be an end to this second wave.
Here at the Miracle Channel, we often talk about the persecution of Christians, Lisa. Well, a new report out of the UK talks about gross human rights abuses against a Muslim group, including forced sterilization. Tell me more about that.
Yeah, so at the Foreign Desk, we've been covering this extremely closely to look at the human rights abuses by the Chinese government, whether they happen to be in Hong Kong, against its own people, against the children in China. And now we know, and we've been following, Muslims who in China have been put into camps. They have been marginalized, they cannot work, and now they have been sterilized, meaning they cannot reproduce. They don't want them to reproduce. They don't want any Muslims to live in that country, and they want them to convert or die, meaning they do not want their community or these camps for there to be any children, any reproduction, etc. New footage came out by drone that caught them, abusing these Muslims in the camps, and they were confronted. There was a UK ambassador a Chinese ambassador to the UK that was confronted with this footage, and he was really backing into the answer as to why this is happening. How can China justify this? How can China expect to be in the world economy, in the world society, and to continue these brutal human rights abuses against its own people, as it's continued to do for decades?
I'm wondering if that's also happening to Christians in various parts of China as well. The forced sterilization and these atrocities, human rights abuses, right?
Absolutely.
Multiple people were injured during a Bible study in Chantilly, Virginia, Lisa, over the weekend when an alleged member of the congregation stabbed the church's pastor before being stopped by the area's police chief, who happened to be in attendance. How bizarre is that?
Yeah, talk about luck. Many more people would have been stabbed had this police officer not been in attendance. I included this story at the Foreign Desk in our daily top 10 email this morning for one reason only. It is because today coincides with the Prager University Back the Blue campaign, which we are supporting here at the Foreign Desk, and I personally am supporting. It is to back police officers, the good police officers that do the hard work day in and day out to keep people safe. And the reason I did this is because had this police officer, off-duty police officer, not been in attendance at this Bible study when one of the individuals stabbed the pastor, many more people would have been hurt, perhaps killed. And we have so many police officers who are doing such good work every single day, and their work is not highlighted. But the 1, 2, 3, 4 bad cops that do the awful things that they do, those stories are highlighted, and with that goes the entire profession. You know, if you go to one bad doctor, you don't wipe out doctors. You don't say, I'll never go to a doctor ever again. You don't tell the insurance companies to defund doctors. You call out by name those few doctors that do the harm. And in this case, we should do the same for the police officers. We call them out, and there's no one who hates bad cops more than the good cops. So this is a great example of good cops doing good things, and it's horrific what happened at this Bible study. You know, good people studying the Bible, studying the holy text, and for this to happen. So we're very grateful that this cop was in attendance.
That's amazing. Incredible story. One of Mexico's biggest and most violent drug cartels is posing a direct challenge to the government there with a remarkable show of force. I've seen some of the images, Lisa. Many of the men carrying sniper rifles could easily be mistaken for members of Mexico's own army.
Absolutely. If you see the footage from this, basically a parade that this drug cartel put on, they are so organized, in uniform, marching along, and talk about the amount of weaponry that they have. They're showing force, they're flexing their muscles. And look, right now, you see a lot of this going on around the globe, whether it's jihadi groups or drug cartels or protesters of many sorts. People realize that this is a vulnerable time, not just for people who are dealing with COVID, but obviously for leadership. So when you have a weak moment in leadership, you have the bad guys, you know, standing up and saying, look, we're here, we're organized, we have a say, we have a voice, and look, we can take over basically because we have the weapons, we have the organization, we have the support, and we can do this. So this is definitely a bit of chest thumping by the drug cartels, and a little foreshadowing of what's to come in Mexico.
Here's an interesting story as well. The United Arab Emirates launched its mission to Mars, marking the occasion of having the first Arab in space, and the launch took place in Japan.
Yes, a little bit of connect the dots on the map for us there. We usually don't talk about space race in the Middle East. We talk about a weapons race in the Middle East. But now we're talking about the UAE actually focusing on getting to Mars and launching that from Japan, of all places. But it was a good effort, a well-organized one. And we wanted to give them props for putting their resources, and we know the UAE has a great amount of resources, but we usually hear about the luxurious lives and the skyscrapers in Dubai, but we don't hear about them trying to get to Mars. So good for them, and we'll keep our eye on their progress.
Did they actually say why they wanted to go to Mars?
Yeah, I think they want to they want to compete. They want to be among the best of the best. They want to be among the countries like the U.S., like China, like Russia, who have had some sort of desire. You can add Israel to that list as well. Some sort of desire to add that to their country's resume. And again, good for them for at least having that desire to put their resources there and at least make an attempt.
Now, Lisa, before I let you go, one of the stories we've had on Bridge City News is the amount of wildfires in Central California. How about where you're located in Southern California? How bad is it so far this year?
Yeah, this year, thank God, we've had fewer incidences. We've had a few years where it was absolutely horrific. People we know lost their homes very close by in Malibu and elsewhere. This year we have enough on our plates. We have many other things. We're having a horrific second surge of COVID here in Southern California. And among other things, the wildfires are among things that we worry about year to year, but so far we're doing okay. Fingers crossed that it continues to be okay.
Yeah, absolutely. Stay safe, Lisa, and thanks again for your time.
Likewise, thank you.
On behalf of all of us here at BCN, I'm Hal Roberts. God bless, and thanks for watching.